a Muslim, just a regular, hardworking, family man Muslim walks by and says, hi, and then the person might be, oh God, are you gonna chop off my head? That's the irrational shit. Like it's like, it doesn't mean that all Muslims or that Muslims in general are now out to get you. It's a select few of absolute disgusting, perverted pigs that are out to get you. It's not Muslims in general.
The odds that I will be attacked by a fundamental Islamist for doing so is very low. I agree. And I also think that there's many reasons to decline to do that sort of thing, but fear of violent retribution is not a good reason if it's something you believe.
And I just want to add one more thing before Don jumps in, is that this reminds me of when I was touring around with Sam Harris, and Sam Harris required all of this expensive security detail to protect him from these so-called Islamists. And I found something irrational about that, in the sense of, like, I would be traveling around with Richard Dawkins, and Richard Dawkins has said as much about Islam in his time. And I would talk to Richard about it. Richard would like look at like the bodyguard standing there that's with Sam wherever he goes, and he would kind of like laugh at it. And so would Lawrence Krauss and all these other people. So there is some level of irrationality that lives in that space. And I think, so I used to be completely dismissive of that Islamophobic term when applied to some of these people and how they behave. But I do think, like, yes, it's almost always used as this bullshit label on people like me who like criticize Islam. And then people are like, oh, that's Islamophobia, and you're just doing it because you hate Muslims. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm doing it because I detest the ideas. But go ahead, Don.
That's like Ben Affleck, right? People are channeling their like inner Ben Affleck. If we remember the conversation, I think it was on Bill Maher, where Ben Affleck called that saying, oh, you're being Islamophobic. No, I'm just criticizing Islam. But we have to recognize that Islamophobia, the term was coined not just for whatever reason, right? We look at the way in which Muslims were treated after 9/11, for example. I had a good friend whose mom, who's married to a Hindu man who grew up in Trinidad, got pushed down the stairs of the subway while called a dirty Muslim. They were right. This is fear of Muslim. It's violence against Muslim people because of fear of Islam, Islamophobia. And I think that what we're seeing with the comments in this section is a similar thing. Travis and I, John, all of this entire community can criticize Islam, but comments like, let me look over here, rest in peace, lads, dumb ways to die. When we look at most Muslim people who live in the US, who live in Canada, who even live in the world, generally you're fine. You don't have to worry about anything. Like Travis said, if I live in Saudi Arabia and I do it, or I live in Kuwait, that's a different thing. But we're here living in the West. We don't need to fear Muslims.
Yeah,
we don't need to fear it at all.
Look, so where does the fear come from? If it's so irrational, I think
it's John. It's like people have seen or heard of people getting their heads chopped off for pissing off Islamists, right? Yeah. Or for doing things that Islamists believe Muhammad or Allah do not approve of. So I understand that that's a scary thing, and you wouldn't want that to happen to yourself. That part is not irrational. The irrational part is that, you know, you could be some Canadian sitting down. It's like, look, I just draw Muhammad and I put it on my computer. And then everyone's like, you better run. You better go into hiding. You better look out because they're coming to get you. And then a Muslim, just a regular, hardworking family man Muslim walks by and says, hi, and then the person might be, oh God, are you going to chop off my head? That's the irrational shit. Like it's like, it doesn't mean that all Muslims or that Muslims in general are now out to get you. It's a select few of absolute disgusting, perverted pigs that are out to get you. It's not Muslims in general.
And I think this is where sometimes I hate the term nuance comes in, because if we look at fundamentalist Judaism, which doesn't really exist the way it used to, right? Stone your kid, kill anyone who's who doesn't keep the Sabbath, who's a Jew. That just doesn't happen anymore. But if I was to read the fundamentals of the Old Testament, I'd be like, oh, do I have no rational basis to fear Judaism? Well, you kind of don't, because Jews aren't going around killing people in the United States. Muslims aren't also going around killing people in the United States. It's not a thing that happens here. It's not a thing that happens in Canada. It happens abroad. right? When, if, for example, you look at France, there's, you know, the Charlie Hebdo shootings, that's a legitimate concern. And at that place, if I was a news organization and released a picture of Muhammad, I would be like, you know, I should have a little reason to be afraid. But it's the irrational part of like, you guys are going to die, or I'm not going to draw Muhammad, I'm not going to join this competition because I'm afraid for my own life. It takes it from a place of concern to a place of irrationality, in my opinion.
And one quick thing, John.
Well, we gotta let John talk. We just fucking
Travis,
not,
I'm trying to agree with you, buddy. I'm trying, like, so I think you pointed out something interesting when you were talking earlier, is that while people like you or people like Sam Harris will be called Islamophobic, often by the people in the comment sections who are so afraid of retribution, in reality, as you pointed out, those people who conflate all Muslims to be fundamentalists, who are so irrationally afraid, are actually being more technically Islamophobic than any of the people who get hit with the label. It's an interesting, ironic twist there that I wanted to tease out for the audience.
It's totally ironic. Like, we're doing this contest and then you get all these comments of people like, oh, they need to run away, they need to get to no, it's like, I would be fine going to a mosque here in Vancouver. I've no fear of that. Now, look, now to the other side, let's also talk about the other thing where in the past, in these Draw Muhammad contests people have organized and done, there have been actual imams that speak to people who are radicals out there, that have put a price or a fatwa or whatever it's called on the heads of the organizer. Now, at that point, that would be a legitimate security concern, right? And legitimate security concern does not mean become an irrational shithead. It just means let's talk to a security company and look at the best steps forward. I've received hundreds of death threats in my life for different reasons. And when I pass these death threats on to security companies, almost every time they've just been like, this is just internet stuff. A couple times they were like, okay, this is pretty extreme. They've given you a date and time and whatever, but we've done some investigating into where this has come from and wherever. And it just didn't seem credible after that point.